Alrighty, so as we approach MLS Cup 2024, which is going to be in 4 days at the time of this recording, I want to start making some video that is related to this year edition of MLS Cup, and most specifically, I think with the way that this year is between two teams that really has kind of faced a lot of adversity to make it to the stage. I mean, if you look at the LA Galaxy, prior to making MLS Cup 2024, it's been a decade-long struggle in terms of part of the period where they had the darkest period of their proud franchise history. And then, of course, the New York Red Bulls. We know the struggle that they've been having when it comes to playoff fertility. I mean, if there's any team that have suffered probably the most heartbreaking and the most frustrating playoff fertility, it's none other than the New York Red Bulls. I mean, there's a reason why there's even a phrase for it. It's called the "that so Metro" thing, going back to the playoff failures those New York, New Jersey Metro Star team has, and that I think it's best for me to kind of look back in terms of the struggle of both of these teams to get to this stage. And today we're gonna look at the New York Red Bulls, and again, while the Galaxy has had a decade long of struggle to get to this point, Red Bulls have even a longer period. And again, this I think is a perfect time to kind of look back at all those playoff struggles and all those pain that they have gone through for 28 years now, and that's so Metro narrative that seems like it could potentially be all but vanquished if they can win on Saturday against the LA Galaxy on the road. Now we start off all the way back in 1996. Of course, they were one of the original 10 teams that came into the league, and unfortunately, them along with FC Dallas is the only team that came into the league in the inaugural season, part of the charter team that comes into the league in 1996, have yet to win an MLS Cup. Now, in their first season, they finished with a record of 15 wins, 17 losses. Though two of those, of course, are shootout losses. Again, back then in MLS, games cannot end in a tie. If the game ends in a tie, it does go into a shootout, and the Red Bulls, of course, had two of those. They finished with 39 points, which was good for them finishing third in the standings. And keep in mind, as I made a video, I think a long time ago on this channel talking about the 1996 MLS season. Back then, making the playoffs, you have to be literally the worst team in your conference to not make it to the playoffs. Like literally 8 out of the 10 teams made it to the playoffs. The Red Bulls were one of those 8 teams that made it, but unfortunately they got eliminated by what we would know to be the first dynasty in MLS history. That is the DC United dynasty, winning 3 MLS Cup in the first 4 season. And keep in mind, DC will be pop up a lot, at least on this list, and so is the New England Revolution too. Because I think if there's two teams that have in really the first decade and a half that has really simply owned the Red Bulls and caused all the pain and suffering and the That's So Metro narrative that comes with the New York, New Jersey Metro Star as they known. It's all come from well, DC United and the New England Revolution. But yeah, they lost in the first round, 2-1 in the best of 3 series. They actually won the first game against DC United in the best of 3 series, but they lost the next two. And as I mentioned before, that was kind of the beginning of what we know as the first dynasty in MLS history with DC. Went on to not only win the inaugural MLS Cup, but went on to win 3 out of the first 4 MLS Cup. Now in 1997, they finished with an 11 win and 19 loss, but they had two shootout win there, so technically they had 13 wins in that season. But they finished with 35 points. They finished fifth in the standings, and yeah, that was the worst record in the Eastern Conference. So they did not make it to the playoffs, and this actually is only one of 4 seasons that the New York Red Bulls did not make it to the playoffs. It's hard to believe that the Red Bulls now heading into their 28th ninth season that they've only missed the playoffs 4 times in their club history. But that being said, the following year they went on to win 12 games, and 3 of those were well, they technically won 15 because they had 3 shootout win and they lost 17 games and finished with 39 points. That was good for them to be being in third in the standings, but unfortunately, it's another first round exit, and that would be a common theme at least for the first half of the decade for the New York, New Jersey Metro Star as they known of. This time it wasn't close. They lost both of the game against Columbus in the best of 3 series. Now, 1999, yeah, this is going to go down as one of the worst, if not arguably the worst season we've ever seen in MLS history. And what's even crazier is that when the Red Bulls does miss out on the playoffs. Two of those seasons turns out to be an absolute disastrous season to a point where it goes down as one of the worst seasons in MLS history. A 4-3-25 is the record. They of course got free shot wins, so technically they got 7 wins for the whole season, but only 15 points. Only the Tampa Bay Mutiny has fewer points. The Mutiny, of course, in 2001 had 14 points. That was kind of part of the process of why they got bust, along with their other Florida interstate rival that is the Miami Fusion. But yeah, they finished sixth in the standing, dead last. Unsurprisingly, did not make the playoffs whatsoever. But then in 2000, they finished with a 17-3-12 record, and they rebounded in a big way. They finished with 54 points. That is probably one of the biggest swing in terms of the points total. I think it is right up there in terms of what we saw with Inter Miami this season, where they finished with a record amount of points, but previous season they were finished near the bottom of the Eastern Conference. But yeah, they finished first in the standing. They didn't win the Supporter Shield because the team that won the Supporter Shield was Sporting KC, or as they were known back then, the Kansas City Wizard. But unfortunately, well, actually, fortunately for the Red Bulls in that season, what's even greater is that they were actually able to win their first round matchup. Unfortunately, they weren't unable to overcome the Chicago Fire. They lost to them 2-1 in the best of free series. Chicago, I think, won the first game. The Red Bulls won the second, but ultimately in the pivotal game three, Chicago was able to win that and move on into MLS Cup in 2000 as a result. Now, in 2001, they finished with 13-3-10 record, finished with 42 points. That was good for second in the standings, but they were eliminated by the LA Galaxy, and this was back when, of course, the playoffs wasn't actually separated by conference. At least that was the playoff format in that 2001 season. But yeah, they lost to the Galaxy 2-1 in the best of three series, and it was also a very tight matchup to a point where Game Three actually went to extra time. And again, back then the golden goal rule was in effect. If you scored the first goal, you basically won the game, and that's exactly what the Galaxy did. They scored the golden goal, eliminating the Red Bulls in the first round. And again, that would just be the beginning of the painful process of the Red Bulls not able to win a playoff series. In fact, it wasn't until I think 2008, the next time, that they would actually win a playoff series after that Eastern Conference final run that they got in 2000. And when I say Eastern Conference final run, you would think that's impressive because they won a couple of games. Remember back then, the playoffs, it was only 8 teams, so it's pretty easy to get to the conference final. All you need to do is win a playoff game series, and you're basically into the conference final. And back then, it wasn't even called the conference final; it was just called the semifinal. That is. But in 2002, this was one of the four seasons that they did not make it to the playoffs with an 11-2-15 record, finished with 35 points, and finished with fourth place. Which normally if you finish fourth, you would make the playoffs, but back then in that season, then only 3 teams make it to the playoffs from their respective conference. In 2003, they finished with 11-9-10 and finished with 42 points. They finished third that season, but then they got eliminated by the New England Revolution, and this would be first of 3 times that they would lose to that team in the span of a couple of years. Again, as I mentioned, New England and DC, those are 2 teams that is going to give any New York, New Jersey Metro Star fan, as they know back then, nightmares for really during the early 2000 into the mid 2000. But yeah, they lost 3-1 in aggregate in the first round, as back then. And this is when the playoff format started to be a two-legged affair. Now in 2004, they finished with an 11-7-12 record, finished with 40 points, but they still finished third in the standings. So yeah, something tells me the East was not that strong that season. But they got eliminated by DC again, and this time it wasn't close whatsoever. It was a 4-0 beatdown in terms of the game. Both time the Red Bulls lost 2-0 in those two-legged affair. And then in 2005, they finished with a 12-11-9 record, good for 47 points, finished fourth in the standings. But unfortunately, they got eliminated by the New England Revolution again, and it's also by the same scoreline as they lost in 2003 as well, that 3-1 aggregate scoreline. Now in 2006, they finished with a 9-12-11 record, and they finished with only 39 points, but yet they still made it to the playoffs because, again, the East probably was very weak in the 2006 season, but they got eliminated by guess who? It's DC United, and again, it's a pretty close aggregate score. 2-1 is the aggregate score this time, so at least they kept it a little bit closer this time, unlike what we saw back in 2004. But then in 2007, they finished with a 12-7-11 record, finished with 43 points. Keep in mind, 2007 was the first year when the New York, New Jersey Metro Star would basically rebrand themselves as the New York Redbulls, and this is hope to see that may not only it was a bit of a controversial move, especially when you have a big corporate name go being named as a nickname of the team, but also they were hoping that maybe this would kind of brush aside the all the futility that those New York, New Jersey Metro Star team does. And keep in mind, this was also the year when they started to bring in some big name players. Well, not that saying that the Red Bulls don't have big name player. I mean, in their inaugural season, they have some very well knowable names like Giovanni Savarese, Tony Miller, and even Peter Vermees and Chris Armas play in that team. But in 2007, as I said, it seems like with them rebranding to a new name, you were thinking maybe finally they can vanquish of not losing in the first round to either DC and New England. Nope. Instead, they lost to New England in the first round, and again, it was a very tight score line. 1-0 is the aggregate score there. There was only one goal that was scored in the two legs, and yeah, again, it's got to be frustrating if you're a Red Bulls fan. Like it's one thing to lose in the first round, and they had a period like this before, as we get into here, where they lost five straight first round matchup, but to lose to the same team over and over again, that has to be absolutely aggravating if you're a Metro Star and now all the Red Bulls fan. But in 2008, they finally broke through. As in 2008, they finished with 10-9-11 is their record, and finished with 39 points. They barely made it to the playoffs in fifth position. But despite the fact that they finally able to defeat the narrative of not able to get past the first round and reach the MLS Cup, which is the last time that they, of course, got to that stage, they lost to Columbus 3-1 in that game, and that was a very good Columbus team too. I mean, they got some really good players on that Columbus team, and unfortunately, they lost to them there in that MLS Cup. And again, this would be the only MLS Cup appearance until what we're gonna see in a couple of days, that they actually had a chance to defeat the narrative that they just simply cannot do anything in the playoffs. And it feels like that MLS Cup loss kind of really hurt them, because in 2009, oh boy, they had one of those all-time worst seasons. 5-6-19 was their record, with only 21 points this season, and finished in seven plays. And yeah, they definitely did not make it to the playoffs as a resort. But that also would be the last time that we would actually see the New York Red Bulls did not make it to the playoffs, because after this, they would now still hold the record right now, at least in the league, in terms of the longest active playoff streak, now at 15 seasons strong. Now in 2010, this of course is the beginning when the Red Bulls really realized that, yeah, let's actually buy some big name player, because we would need to have some big name player that come into the New York market, as well as they see what's going on with the LA market, of how they brought in David Beckham and all those guys. So they brought in Thierry Henry. I believe they bought him during the summer transfer window, but despite bringing Thierry Henry, I mean, it kind of worked out well, at least with them in the regular season. I mean, they finished 15-9 and 6 with 51 points. They finished first, which is the first time they did that since 10 years ago in 2000. But unfortunately, it still does not escape in terms of the first round for fertility exit, or at least the first round fertility exit is basically back in this team. And this time they lost to the San Jose Earthquakes 3-1 in an accurate score, in a series where they actually won the first game against the Quakes, only to lose 3-1 at home against the Quakes. And mind you, yes, the Quakes back in 2010, that was an okay kind of team. That was kind of the almost ready the beginning of the Goonies kind of Quakes team. But yeah, that's absolutely inexcusable to lose to the Quakes. And to this day, that actually is the last time that the San Jose Earthquakes actually won a playoff series. It's hard to believe, 14 years now that the Quakes have not won a playoff series as a result. But in 2011, they finished with 10-16-8 record, and finished with 46 points. And yeah, they definitely had a regression kind of season, finish in fifth position. And again, this time again, it's the first round narrative not only happening, but it happened in the play-in round. So this was the year where we actually had a play-in round in the playoff format. I know people might not realize that we actually used to have a play-in round. That was what happened in the 2011 season, and yeah, they got eliminated by Dallas in the play in round two. Nothing is the score line. And then in 2012, we saw the Red Bulls finish with 16-9-9 record and finish with 57 points and finish in third position. I think this is the year when Tim Cahill also joined the Red Bulls as well. Again, this is when we started as we get into these year. This is when not only they had that one year where they not only had the likes of Tim Cahill and Thierry Henry, but they also had Bradley Wright Phillips and Luis Robles in goal. That was a really good Red Bull size as well. But yeah, in 2012, the good news is they finally at least defeat the narrative that they can't get past the first round. But that's mainly due to the fact that they got a bye and were able to get to the second round automatically. So it's not really kind of defeating the narrative when you still lose in the first playoff off series. And this time, guess who it is? It's that team again. It's DC United. I'm pretty sure Red Bulls fan at least back then, maybe supporting this team all these years, must be kind of getting tired of losing to that team again. Again, that has kind of haunt them throughout the throughout really the first 15 years of their existence, and it was a close one too. 2-1 is the aggregate score line in 2012. Now in 2013. They finally won their first trophy of their club history, if you of course count the supporter shield as a trophy. And this also kind of began the first of 3 and 6 season when they were able to win the supporter shield. So if the supporter shield actually count as a major trophy, you can say it's kind of a dynasty in terms of the Red Bulls doing very well in the regular season. But again, this was a really stacked Bulls team, as I mentioned. A lot of good names out there a minute ago, but they finished with a 17-8-9 record, finished with 59 points, which was the most that they've ever had in franchise history. But they got eliminated by the Houston Dynamo in the second round. 4-3 is the aggregate score. The second leg actually went to extra time, and yeah, again, that just add in more pain in terms of already been a franchise that suffered multiple playoff futility. And again, this is just like what we saw in 2012. The playoff format means that they automatically get to the second round. And up to this point, it's hard to believe they have still not able to win a playoff series with all the talent that they have had. This team still have not won a playoff series since 2008. Now, fortunately, in 2014, it finally came to an end. They finally won a couple of playoff series. They finished with a record of 13, 11, and 10, and finished with 50 points. And they didn't finish as well in the standings in fourth place. But obviously, the goal of this team is to make MLS Cup and go deep. They don't really care what the regular season is, and they almost were able to do so. But then they got eliminated by another team that I'm pretty sure a Red Bulls fan, if they support the team for a long time, know that, oh, great, it's that team again. It's New England again. They lost 4-3 in the Eastern Conference final in that series. By the way, both of those teams, Houston and New England, those two teams that eliminated the Red Bulls, both of them actually went on to win MLS Cup, and both of them actually lost in MLS Cup to the as a resort. Or actually, no, I'm sorry. Houston didn't actually make it to MLS Cup. The New England, of course, did. They lost to the Galaxy in MLS Cup 2024. Actually, I think I was meaning the next season where we also saw the Red Bulls lose in to a team that made it to MLS Cup and lost in MLS Cup, and that time is the Columbus Crew. So after finishing 18-6-10 and finished with 60 points, which is by far the best points total they have ever had, once again winning the Supporters Shield, they could not overcome the Columbus Crew and cannot overcome a Great Berhalter Columbus Crew team, losing 2-1 in the Eastern Conference final as a result of that. Now heading into 2016, and keep in mind 2015 they didn't have Thierry Henry. Thierry Henry left this team in 2014, but this is where they really started to transition from a Bradley or from a Thierry Henry team to a Bradley Wright Phillips team. And in 2016, they once again had a great regular season, 16-9-9, and finished with 57 points, finishing in first in the standings. But guess what happened? Another exit early on, and another exit in terms of the first playoff series. This time it's Montreal that joins the list of Red Bulls team that simply just cannot win in the playoffs. This time in the second round, 3-1 is the aggregate score. And while that Montreal team had some good players as well, I mean they had the likes of Nacho Piatti and Didier Drogba there as well. Yeah, that you simply feel like the Red Bulls were the better team by far. And again, another playoff series where it's a early playoff exit and another uh series or another playoffs where it's kind of almost a what if this team actually can overcome the demons of these early exit playoff rounds. Now, in 2017, they finished with a 14-8-12 record and finished with 50 points. No doubt they had a major regression. This was one of the worst season that they've had in recent memory, finishing in sixth position. They did win a first round matchup. That's the good news. They actually beat the Chicago Fire, which yeah, that's kind of sad because to this day the Fire has not made it back to the playoffs to this point. But yeah, they got eliminated by Toronto FC eventually, the team that won MLS Cup. And yeah, this one was kind of more expected because, Toronto was an absolute juggernaut during the 2016-2017. I mean, you got guys like Javenko and and Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley. That team was absolutely stacked. And to be fair, they almost won that series too. I mean, if it wasn't for the away goal rule being ineffective, they probably could have had a chance to win that series as well. Now, in 2018, this was the best season that the Red Bulls have ever had in their franchise history. 22-5-7, finished with 71 points, which not only won their third Supporters Shield in 6 years, but that actually was the best points total ever back then, and they actually beat Atlanta in terms of that record. But Atlanta kind of had their revenge in the playoffs because they got eliminated by them in the Eastern Conference Final. 3-1 is the aggregate score, and just like Toronto, that Atlanta team was very special. I mean, the led by Tata Martino. We know the great dynamic duo of Miguel Almiron and Joseph Martinez. That was a great Atlanta team. But you got to remember that was also a season where the Red Bulls actually won both of the meetings against Atlanta in the regular season. So they actually matched up well against Atlanta, and they just cannot get it done once again, failing in the Eastern Conference Final. And at that point, that's kind of when it really started to broke this Red Bulls team. Because remember how I said in the early mid 2010 they had a stretch where they win five straight time losing in the first round. Yeah, yeah, it started to happen again, starting in 2019. And you know what's even weird to see is that you know how here they lost five straight first round. This what happened in their sixth attempt to in their attempt to get past the first round. They went to MLS Cup. Now they lost that one. So is history gonna repeat itself? Maybe they might lose to the Galaxy. I mean, maybe Galaxy fans watching this are hoping that that's the case. But yeah, this is the beginning of just five straight first round exit once again. It started in a painful one too. I mean, they got eliminated by the Philadelphia Union. They were 14-6-14 that season with 48 points, so they didn't do well in the regular season. In fact, this is kind of the point when the Red Bulls just kind of barely sneaked into the postseason, only get eliminated in the first round. But this was probably the closest out of them, and probably maybe the most heartbreaking one. They led 3-1 in that game against the Philadelphia Union, only to just completely they went that so metro in the second half and end up losing 4-3 after extra time. It was a very entertaining game and one of the classic as well in the playoffs. But if you're a Red Bulls fan, yeah, you do not want to remember that game. And then in the COVID shortened season, they finished with a 9-5-9 record with 32 points. Again, they barely made it to the playoffs in sixth position. That was also the year where for half of the season they had I think they had Bradley Carnell as the head coach, and then they decided to put Gerhard Stuber as the new head coach in that debut game in the first round against Columbus. To this day, I think that's the only time we have ever seen an MLS head coach make his debut in the playoffs. That is not only a weird time to do so, but just almost an impossible task, and it's no surprise that the Red Bulls lost that one. Though they did make it interesting. I mean, it was 3-0. I remember in that game against Columbus. They did make it interesting. Unfortunately, falling late. So even if they looked like they were gonna do their own miracle, that so Metro moment denied them as a result. And then in 2021, they finished 13-9-12 and finished with 48 points. This was probably by far the closest they came from ending this streak of making the playoffs. I mean, that year they literally had to get a draw against Nashville to make it into the playoffs. They did exactly that, finish in seventh position. But unfortunately, they got eliminated by the Union, and again, they lost them in extra time, 1-0. This one was a less painful compared to 2019, but still, it's got to be frustrating. Once again, losing to the Union in extra time. And then in 2022, they finished 15-8-11, finished with 53 points. This was by far the best season that the Red Bulls has had since 2018, finishing fourth position. But they got eliminated by FC Cincinnati in the first round, and they were actually the only team to lose at home in that first round of playoffs. And they also lost to a team that were making their first ever playoff appearance and playing their first playoff game. Yeah, that sounds like the Red Bulls, and sounds like that's so metro. So from them to lose to a team that have never made it to the playoffs. And well, we know that Cincinnati started to become a juggernaut under Pat Nolan. Yeah, I mean that's got to be embarrassing. The fact that they not only lose to a team in the first round, but they were the only team at home to lose in that first round during that series. Although you could say it's embarrassing, but then I also remember where the Red Bulls were absolutely horrendous at home during that period of time. Now in 2023, they finished with an 11-10-13 record and finished with 43 points. They finished eighth in the standings. So again, they kind of almost missed out on playoffs, although they were one of the play-in team back when this was the year when it was first introduced that 9 team will make it to the playoffs. The 8v9 team will play in the playing round. And to be fair, they actually won that playing round against Charlotte. They absolutely destroyed Charlotte in that first round. But then they got beat by the same team that they lost last year to Cincinnati. This time it was not close whatsoever. It was a 2-0 series. It was pretty comfortable for Cincinnati to sweep them over. But that being said, even I said it's comfortable. Game two was probably the closest one where the Red Bulls not only lose in the penalty kick shootout, but they lost 8-7 in that PK shootout. There was times where I remember in that PK shootout they could have put a way to move on into game number three. Now, would they one game number three against Cincinnati? I don't know, but still, yeah. Again, that was really, I think that was kind of the last that so metro kind of narrative in terms of all the playoff fertility that this Red Bulls team has had. Because in 2024, in this current season, again, it kind of follows the narrative what we saw between 2003 all the way to 2008. After five straight playoff fertility, they finally made it to MLS Cup once again. Finished 11-4-9 and finished with 47 points. But unlike what we saw in 2008, well, I mean, I would say just like what we saw in 2008, that was a team that weren't expected to make it too deep in the playoffs, but they somehow shocked everyone. I think this team, it was kind of similar to that, but I think this team is even more shocking considering that, again, this is a team that we saw this season in the second half of the season with the amount of time they have throw away points because of bad finishing and times where their attacking players were completely snake bin. Nobody would have thought that this team would make it to MLS Cup. Like it would almost be a pipe dream to do so, especially in terms of the teams that they beat so far. I mean, beating the defending MLS Cup champion, nobody saw that coming. And then in the second round against NYCFC, I mean maybe some people saw it because it's a local rivalry, but still, NYCFC has been very good at home. So yeah, I mean nobody kind of saw that to me in terms of that. But also against Orlando City on the road, again, this you would think this is the chance for Orlando to do something against a relatively team that they should beat in the playoffs. They don't do so in the Eastern Conference Final. But now, of course, they made it to MLS Cup, and just like what we saw in 2008, they face against another juggernaut that is the LA Galaxy. There's no doubt the Galaxy are heavily favorites, and that's even if Ricky Pooch is not going to be available because of the torn ACL injury. That I'll talk more about that in the News of the Week episode tomorrow, and also mentioning that in terms of looking at the Galaxy decade-long fertility to make it to this stage. But who knows? Maybe this might be finally the time where the Red Bulls could end that narrative. Again, this is the lowest seed to ever made it to MLS Cup, and that if they do win MLS Cup, this might be the best Cinderella story that we've probably seen maybe since what we saw back in 2010. Again, in order you feel like if the Red Bulls are gonna win this, they need to do something that the Colorado Rapids did in 2010. And I don't know if that means that they need to score an own goal to do so, because if you remember back in that 2010 MLS Cup, Colorado literally won that MLS Cup by not scoring a single. It was an own goal that was kind of the difference. But it can anything can happen in a cup final like that. And what a way it would be in terms of ending this decade long narrative. And that for Red Bulls fan, especially for any Red Bulls fan that's been supporting this team since they came into the league in '96, it feels like if they do win this MLS Cup, not only there's a huge relief in their face, but there's got to be a lot of happiness that's got to be happening because not only we see another team winning their first ever MLS Cup, but really if there's any team that deserved to win their first MLS Cup with all the fertility and all the that's so Metro kind of narrative and all the legacy of failure we have seen from this team. It's got to be the New York Red Bulls, and we've seen before in MLS and even in other sports where narrative eventually is going to come to an end. As painful as some narrative is, and maybe some curse that it's been through, as this Red Bulls team seems like they've been having that's so Metro curse throughout the year, throughout the time. It's eventually going to have to come to an end, and we'll see whether or not if this finally might be the time where it finally comes to an end, where the New York Red Bulls might potentially win their first ever MLS Cup and finally vanquish the That's So Metro narrative and the 28 years of pain that they've been suffering ever since they came into the league in '96. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to leave a like, smash the subscribe button. So, as I mentioned later on, I'm gonna make a video similar to the Galaxy because while the Red Bulls have had a lot of pain throughout the 28 years it's existed, the Galaxy has also had their pain too, really, for the past decade. And you would think that might not be the case for a team that have won the most MLS Cup in MLS history, but as I'll talk about in that video of how the Galaxy has went through an absolute roller coaster ride to get to this stage, to a point where it actually got involved to a point where they were actually at the darkest period of their time, and even a fan boycott that happened that got them back to where they belong and back to what the Galaxy, who for many years has been considered the top tier team and the supreme team in the league should be at. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.